What if the price for the Soul Stone was paid by Clint Barton, the man who had always been the steady hand in the chaos, taken first? The arrow that never flew, the heartbeat that suddenly stopped. Natasha Romanoff and Clint Barton stood on the edge of the precipice. The cold wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of salt and loss. The sky above was a swirling gray, mirroring the storm inside their hearts. The jagged cliff dropped away into endless void, the abyss below swallowing light and hope alike. The Red Skull's voice, haunted and merciless, cut through the silence.
To claim the Soul Stone, one must lose that which they love.
Those words hung heavy between them. Natasha turned to Clint, searching his eyes for any sign of doubt. But what she found was steel. Quiet determination tempered by deep sorrow.
Nat, this one's mine,
Clint said softly, his voice steady but laced with tenderness. Her breath caught. Her gaze locked on his. A silent plea mixed with love and desperation.
No, we do this together.
She whispered fiercely. But Clint shook his head. The weight of their past and their shared sacrifices etched in every line of his face.
You've already given enough. This time it's my turn,
He said. They had fought side by side for years, through wars, betrayals, losses. They had always protected each other. But now, at the moment that mattered most, Clint was ready to be the one to pay the ultimate price. A heavy silence settled. Natasha's hand reached for his, trembling, but Clint squeezed it once. A farewell, a promise. Then, with a last look filled with everything they could never say aloud, Clint stepped forward. Into the abyss. Time slowed. The world seemed to hold its breath. The Soul Stone pulsed, bathing the cliff in an eerie amber glow. And then, Clint Barton was gone. Natasha crumpled to her knees, breathless, the air sucked from her lungs.
Clint!
She whispered, voice cracking, tears streaming down her face. The universe shifted, a chapter closed, and a new, darker path began. The Avengers compound was silent. Not a word was spoken at first. The usual hum of life, the banter, the laughter, the tension, had evaporated. Clint Barton was gone. The man who had been their compass, their steady hand amid chaos, had sacrificed everything. Steve Rogers stared at the empty seat where Clint once sat. The weight of loss pressed down on him like the heaviest shield he'd ever carried.
He was our anchor, Nat.
Steve said softly, his voice almost breaking the stillness. Tony Stark's jaw clenched as he paced the room. The rage and grief fought beneath his sharp gaze.
He was family.
Tony muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Bruce Banner sat quietly, staring out the window, wrestling with the guilt and pain clawing at his soul. Without Hawkeye, the battles felt unmoored, untethered. The precision and calm he brought were gone, replaced by chaos and desperation. Every mission, every fight, seemed to carry the ghost of the man who was no longer there. Natasha Romanoff sat alone in the corner, the pain etched across her face. Her heart heavy with grief, she barely spoke. When she did, her voice was raw with emotion.
Clint was more than an archer. He was the heart of this team.
She whispered. The weight of his loss rippled through every member of the Avengers. Without him, they felt fragmented, like a bowstring stretched too tight, threatening to snap. Even Thor, god of thunder, felt the void left behind. His boisterous laughter was replaced by a somber silence, and his hammer's thunderous crash lost its usual certainty. And yet, life forced them forward. The universe didn't wait for morning, because the fight wasn't over. The weight of Clint's sacrifice settled heavily on Natasha Romanoff's shoulders. She carried it like a wound that wouldn't heal, a constant ache beneath every mission, every fight, every breath. Hawkeye was gone, but his absence echoed louder than any enemy's roar. In the quiet moments, Natasha would catch herself reaching for the phone to call Clint, only to remember he wouldn't answer. She saw his face in every shadow, heard his voice in every silence. The man who had been her partner, her friend, the anchor to her storm, was no longer there. She sat alone in the dim light of the compound, staring at the arrow Clint had once handed her, a symbol of hope, precision, and sacrifice.
I'll make this right for Clint. For us.
She whispered fiercely, clutching the arrow tight. Her resolve became a fire that burned brighter with every step she took. The mission to undo the devastation caused by Thanos' snap was no longer just a battle. It was a crusade for redemption. Every choice, every risk, was made in Clint's memory. Her teammates saw it too. The fierce determination that burned in her eyes, the weight she bore silently. Steve Rogers approached her one evening, his voice gentle but steady.
You're carrying more than just your own pain. Let us carry some of it too.
She shook her head, a small, sad smile breaking through the grief.
I can't. Not yet. Not until I know he's not forgotten.
Years of battles had taught Natasha one brutal truth. Loss never truly ended. It only changed shape. Her family was gone. Her future with Clint, snatched away on that cold cliff. But she refused to let his death be meaningless.
For every arrow he never fired, I'll fight twice as hard.
She vowed. And so, Natasha Romanoff became the living promise of Clint Barton's legacy. Relentless, unyielding, and forever driven by love and loss. The universe shattered. Half of all life vanished in an instant. Friends, families, entire worlds, erased with a snap of fingers. But Clint Barton was not there to pull the arrow that might have saved them. The weight of his absence settled on the Avengers like a shadow they could not escape. Steve Rogers looked around the compound, seeing empty seats and fallen comrades, his voice barely a whisper.
We lost more than half, and we lost one of our own.
Tony Stark's usual sarcasm was gone, replaced by a quiet despair.
Clint was supposed to be here. He was supposed to be the one to bring us back.
Tony said, shaking his head. Natasha Romanoff stared into the void of her grief, haunted by the moment Clint stepped off that cliff.
He made the choice so we could have a chance. And now, we owe him everything.
She said, voice trembling. The world outside was broken, cities abandoned, loved ones vanished. Clint's family, Laura and the children, were left waiting, hoping, praying for a miracle that never came. Every mission after the snap was marked by Clint's absence. The man who had held them steady was gone, and the cracks began to show. Fights were fiercer, risks greater. The Avengers struggled not just against Thanos, but against the hole left in their ranks. Bruce Banner once confessed in a rare moment of vulnerability.
Without Clint, it feels like we're missing more than just an archer. We're missing a piece of ourselves.
But time did not pause for mourning. The clock was ticking. They had to find a way back. And Natasha, carrying the weight of Clint's sacrifice, vowed to lead them there. The quiet home where Laura Barton and her children waited was a world apart from the chaos of the Avengers' battles. Yet, it was where the true cost of Clint's sacrifice settled deepest. Laura paced the living room, her heart heavy with a weight no words could ease. The absence of Clint was an ache that no amount of waiting could soften. The children played quietly, their laughter tinged with uncertainty. The space beside them, always empty. One evening, a message arrived from the compound. Natasha Romanoff's name appeared on the screen. Laura's hands trembled as she answered. Laura. Natasha's voice was soft but steady.
I wanted to tell you that Clint, he died a hero.
Laura swallowed hard, tears threatening to fall.
How do you tell a child their hero didn't come home?
She whispered, voice breaking.
He loved you all more than anything. That was his strength, his reason to fight.
Natasha spoke gently. She paused, then said,
I came to bring you something.
A few days later, Natasha returned, holding a carefully wrapped bundle. She knelt beside the children, her voice tender.
This was Clint's promise. He aimed for a better world, one where you could grow up safe.
She said, revealing one of his arrows. The youngest child touched the arrow reverently. Laura looked at Natasha with gratitude and pain.
Thank you for reminding us who he was.
She said quietly. But even with Natasha's words and the symbol of Clint's sacrifice, the emptiness lingered. Life had to go on. Yet, every birthday, every quiet moment without Clint, was a reminder of the man who had given everything. Natasha often visited, sharing stories, holding the family together when the world around them was falling apart. Clint's sacrifice was etched into their lives, a legacy of love and loss, courage and hope. And though he was gone, Clint Barton's spirit remained, a father, a husband, a hero, forever. The day of the final battle arrived, a day that would decide the fate of the universe. The Avengers stood united, but something crucial was missing. The steady hand of Clint Barton, the archer who had always been their backbone, was gone. Without Hawkeye, the team felt incomplete. Natasha Romanoff stood at the forefront, her eyes burning with resolve. Every movement, every strike, carried the weight of Clint's memory.
For Clint,
She whispered, steadying her breath. The battlefield was chaos incarnate. Thanos' forces poured in like a storm, relentless and unyielding. Without Clint's precision, the Avengers struggled to keep formation. The calm focus he brought to every fight was sorely missed. Steve Rogers barked orders, trying to compensate for the absence.
Hold the line. Watch your angles.
But the team faltered. The precision arrows that once found impossible targets were gone. The balance had shifted. Tony Stark threw himself into the fray, his armor battered and sparks flying. Yet the enemy pressed harder. In the thick of the fight, Natasha moved like a ghost, agile, fierce, determined. She took out enemies with ruthless efficiency, every move a tribute. She breathed through clenched teeth. The battle raged, brutal and unforgiving. The absence of one man felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. But the Avengers fought on, because they had to, because Clint had given everything for them. When the dust settled, victory was theirs. But the cost was etched into every heart. The man who should have been there, the man who once carried them through impossible odds, was gone forever. Natasha knelt amidst the ruins, eyes closed.
we did it, but I wish you were here.
She whispered. The battlefield was silent but for the echoes of loss and the promise that Clint Barton's sacrifice would never be forgotten. Clint Barton's sacrifice reshaped the Avengers and the universe itself. He was more than an archer, more than a fighter. He was the heart that kept them grounded, the soul that gave them purpose. In the quiet moments after the final battle, the team gathered, not to celebrate, but to remember. Steve Rogers looked around the room and said softly,
Clint gave us something no one else could. Hope grounded in humanity.
Tony Stark nodded, eyes heavy with loss.
He wasn't flashy. No armor, no powers, just a man with a bow and a will to protect.
Natasha Romanoff placed Clint's arrow on the table, her fingers lingering.
He taught us what it means to fight for family, for those we love.
The legacy Clint left wasn't written in headlines or myths. It was in the small moments, the laughter, the sacrifices, the lives he touched. Laura Barton and the children kept his memory alive at home, sharing stories of the man who'd given everything for their future. And across the worlds, the story of Hawkeye grew. Kids learned of the archer who never gave up, who stood tall when the odds were impossible. Warriors told tales of his quiet bravery. But Hawkeye's legacy was more than legend. It was a promise to stand for the ordinary, to fight for the overlooked, to carry on even when the weight feels unbearable. Because Clint Barton showed the universe that true heroism isn't about power. It's about heart. It's about sacrifice. It's about being the last one standing. And in every arrow fired, in every battle fought, his spirit lived on. Because heroes don't truly die. They live on, in memories, in courage, in the very fight for a better world. And Clint Barton's fight was far from over. If Clint Barton's sacrifice changed everything, imagine what other choices could rewrite the Marvel Universe. Subscribe and hit the bell to explore more what-if stories that flip everything you thought you knew. Thanks for watching. See you in the next chapter.